Good afternoon, I'm Nick Piercy. The First Gentleman is a life-imitating art political thriller written by Gerald Weaver, who spent time on Capitol Hill and as Chief of Staff in the House of Representatives. And it's a book that imagines a first female president. Sound familiar? We'll talk about the book and we'll talk about what may happen in US politics over the next few months. Gerald, my guest, very soon.
Online on 95.2 and on digital. This
is BBC Radio Oxford.
Radio for Oxfordshire.
You've been keeping up to date with the US presidential election. Donald Trump versus Hillary Clinton. We could, I suppose, see America's first female president. An event foreshadowed in my next guest's new book, The First Gentleman, by American author Gerald Weaver, follows the career of Melinda Sherman as she tries to rise to the top. And Gerald joins me now. Good afternoon.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you for having me.
Let's begin with the experience that you have to write this book. Can you just give us a brief background of your career in American politics, Gerald?
Well, I began as an intern, believe it or not, and then I taught myself how to run campaigns and convinced a Democratic challenger to let me manage his campaign at a very young age. Against a Republican incumbent. We won, which was rare in those days. I was then the youngest chief of staff on Capitol Hill. I became a lawyer, lobbyist, and then a lobbyist on my own. I also ran a state for a presidential campaign once.
Right, okay. What actually does a lobbyist do? Because when we watch things like The West Wing and House of Cards, they are very prominent. But what does it actually do?
Well, all I know is how I tried to do it, which was to be a student of the business and to see where the synergies were and where the interests were in common, and not to ever ask people to do something that was against their interests. But if you could find a synergy where, let's say, somebody was against the federal antitrust exemption for Major League Sports or whatever, and that would help you, defeat a particular piece of legislation, that's how I worked. But you're right. It's a sort of a seedy side of American politics.
Is it in the main trying to persuade people to say no to something rather than persuade them to say yes to something?
In the main, and that's certainly historically been the case. I think things have changed now. The growth in the dark side of it is by people who are espousing, very conservative points of view, but actually want to preserve their own interests to pollute and to violate the government rules have grown, and I think they really want to get rid of things that hold back corporate interests.
Yeah, you've watched West Wing, haven't you?
Yes, I have. I'm afraid so.
Okay, you know what this question's going to be, don't you? Is it really like that?
West Wing is more like it than House of Cards could ever even remotely be, which is a bit over the top. So, yeah, I would say West Wing's a bit like it. The funny thing is that there's a show on American television called Veep, and to me that's the most realistic one.
but isn't that a comedy show, that one?
Yeah, but she's clueless and selfish, and it's like every person inside the Beltway in Washington knows someone like that.
We'll come on to your book, The First Gentleman, in a moment, because it predicts a female president. Now I know they had a female president in 24, so I've had sort of should we say the example of President Allison Taylor taking control. Right. But I wonder whether maybe America is right for a female president. I mean, we heard Hillary overnight saying there is now a crack in the glass ceiling, which is a fine quote. But could that ceiling be smashed come November?
Yes, and I think it's probably more a significant headwind that she's been flying against than we know, because the misogyny and sexism are very strong in America. She's had to be very, very careful. And then on the other side, you have Trump calling women fat pigs and talking about how good they look, or referring to various cycles and utterly getting away with it, where you would think it would just blow up in front of him. So she's up against quite a bit. But I think one of the things I did in writing this book, and the reason it's called The First Gentleman, is I think that whatever change occurs in gender roles in America, it's going to be people watching Bill Clinton more than watching Hillary Clinton.
He did go on a bit last night, didn't he?
Well, I thought he did, but he did say he kind of took a step in the direction of my book where he said she was his best friend and that he asked her many times to marry him and that she was the best thing to happen, which is, my point is if a man who's obviously a manly man like Bill Clinton comes out and supports his wife and takes that secondary role, I think that will mean more to men in America than to have a female president.
Right. Will he be able to actually stay in the background if this comes to fruition in November?
And obviously the next excellent best question, and I probably don't think so. I mean, my first gentleman, Garth Teller, who raises the kids and runs the campaign and serves every use his wife needs, is far more likely to change roles. But Bill is Bill, and plus he's also the former president. So yeah. I don't see him redecorating the White House or picking out the china.
No, okay. My guest is Gerald Weaver. The book is called The First Gentleman. Afternoon, I'm Nick Piercy, 18 minutes past 2. Gerald Weaver is my guest. His book is called The First Gentleman, which imagines a first female president. And Gerald's experience of Capitol Hill and all around Washington has, given you quite the background. And you actually wrote this book before there was any notion of a female first president?
Yes, Nick, I wrote it 2 years ago, and the American copyright's 2014. And I not only was envisioning a future female president, but a candidate who would sort of puncture the political orthodoxy and say things that normally aren't being said on the national stage and being recognized for it. And I think to a certain extent that was predictive because Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump have gained quite a following just by being unorthodox.
Yeah. Melinda Sherman is the first female president. I would guess your time on Capitol Hill, you have picked a bit from this woman, a bit from that lady, or whatever. Is that how it all works?
Well, I have to confess, I did try to construct a perfect candidate. She's a decorated war veteran. She's handsome. She's relatively young. She's quite appealing. And also she's got various other things that Hillary would never get away with. For instance, she's injured physically and psychologically. She's got quite a colorful family. And she promises to breastfeed in the Oval Office even when she's meeting with Vladimir Putin.
Right.
So it's a bit different. But my point being that in the future, the women won't have to be cautious. They'll be able to be just like men.
No, sure. And there's a proper love story underneath all this, isn't there?
Yeah, I think that's right too. And the thing that she loves her husband for is that he's really supportive. And I have a sort of a Dickensian line in there. The book is also an homage to Dickens, but only if you are familiar with him. And it says, proving forever the truth of the well-known and quite celebrated maxim that a man should have children and be their mother before he's ever allowed to enter a relationship with a woman. And so she falls in love with the first gentleman because he's a good father and he's nurturing and supportive, which I hope is a lesson that men learn too.
Oh, yeah. In this book, do you think there's anything that is possibly too far-fetched, or with your knowledge of American politics over the last couple of years, shall we say, is anything possible now?
I have to say, if you'd asked me this question 2 years ago, I might have said, yes, this is a work of fiction. But I think at this point, anything seems to be able to go. I mean, going back to Dickens, I mean, if Trump's not a Dickens character, I don't know what he is. He's a grotesquerie. It's interesting.
Grotesquerie is a word I've never heard. I'll have to write that down and start using it. That's absolutely brilliant. When we actually get to the stage, you reckon, if there is, and it is quite possible there might be a President Trump, at his first press conference when he visits the UK, will there be somebody from the UK press corps giving him hell like the Americans gave Boris Johnson the other day?
Oh, I don't know if anybody's going to get hell like Boris did at that press conference. That was positively entertaining. And plus, it will come not as a minister, but as the president. But I have to tell you, and I think they'll have to rename the country the United States of Petty Vendetta, because that seems to be his whole MO. He may have been offended by a baggage handler at Heathrow and end the special relationship we have.
I have a question here that goes, and finally, who do you want to become president? But I think I probably know the answer. But could you very briefly compare compare and contrast what a President Trump world might be like against a President Hillary Clinton world?
Well, one of the things about the Clintons, and we can't ever dissociate the two of them, is that they're very good politicians. They're very concerned about government. And between the two of them over the last 45 years, they've amassed an incredible amount of experience. I mean, almost on paper, you couldn't come up with a better president in Hillary Clinton. And she's going to be reasonable. She's not going to be crazy on the left, and she'll be center left. Whereas Trump, I can't even begin to tell you what it would mean, because he's just all over the map. He's not even really run a business. He has that little weird real estate thing, and people who've done business with him don't like him. And I can't tell you what he'll do, except if he should win, I hope he goes on vacation and leaves it to his vice president.
You know, I've got a great idea for your next novel, Gerald. I reckon you should have an alien as a president, because after all that's gone on, it isn't without the bounds of possibility that might happen. You never know.
Right. I think one is running Russia, so why not the United States?
Good luck with the book. It's called The First Gentleman. And my guest, Gerald Weaver, thank you very much indeed for joining us this afternoon here at BBC Radio Oxford.
Thank you, Nick. Bye.